They said she'd crack under artillery fire until she directed counter-battery operations that silenced 40 enemy cannons. This story begins at Fort Sill in Oklahoma, where Captain Jessica Calculator Martinez was completing her advanced artillery training and evaluation for promotion to Fire Direction Center Commander. At 28 years old, Jessica had an impressive academic record, degrees in mathematics and physics from West Point, top scores in ballistics and trajectory analysis, and a mind that could calculate firing solutions faster than most computers. But her superiors weren't convinced she could handle the psychological pressure of coordinating artillery operations under hostile fire. "Captain Martinez," said Colonel James Thunder Patterson during her final evaluation, "your technical qualifications are outstanding, but we have serious concerns about your psychological resilience under combat stress. Artillery warfare isn't about mathematics in a classroom. It's about making life and death calculations while enemy shells are exploding around you." Jessica stood at attention in the Artillery Command Center at Fort Sill, surrounded by the massive displays and communication equipment that would become her tools of war. "Sir, I understand that combat conditions create additional stress factors, but mathematical principles don't change under fire. Trajectory calculations, wind compensation, and target analysis remain constant regardless of external pressure." Brigadier General Robert Iron Rain Thompson, the artillery school commandant, leaned back in his chair with skepticism. "Martinez, you're thinking like an engineer, not like a combat commander. When 155mm shells are landing around your position every 30 seconds, when your communications are being jammed, when you're receiving casualty reports from multiple units, that's when most officers break down. Your academic excellence means nothing if you can't function under that kind of pressure." Major Sarah Steele Rodriguez, head of Combat Operations Assessment, added her concerns. "Jessica, we've analyzed your stress response patterns during simulated combat exercises. Your heart rate increases beyond optimal levels, your decision-making slows down under time pressure, and you show signs of analysis paralysis when faced with incomplete information. These are red flags for artillery command." But Jessica had studied the psychology of combat stress extensively, and she believed the military was misunderstanding the relationship between analytical thinking and performance under pressure. "Ma'am, with respect, I think those stress responses indicate engagement, not breakdown. When I'm processing multiple variables quickly, my heart rate increases because my brain is working harder, not because I'm panicking. Mathematical analysis doesn't slow down under pressure, it becomes more focused." 6 months later, Jessica's theories would be tested in the most challenging circumstances imaginable during Operation Steel Thunder. Intelligence reports confirmed that enemy forces had established a massive artillery complex in the mountainous region along the eastern border. 40 heavy cannons, 15 multiple rocket launchers, and the most sophisticated counter-battery radar system ever deployed in combat. The enemy artillery posed an immediate threat to American forward operating bases and supply lines. Their positions were heavily fortified, expertly camouflaged, and protected by advanced electronic warfare systems that could jam American communications and confuse targeting systems. "Captain Martinez," General Thompson announced during the emergency briefing at Forward Operating Base Apache in the combat zone, "due to Colonel Harrison's injuries from the recent shelling, you're being promoted to temporary Fire Direction Center Commander for this operation. I want to be absolutely clear. This is the most complex counter-battery mission we've attempted in this theater. You'll be coordinating fire from 25 American artillery pieces while under constant enemy bombardment." Jessica felt the enormous weight of responsibility, but also a surge of intellectual excitement. This was exactly the kind of mathematical challenge she had been preparing for her entire career. "Sir, I understand the mission parameters. My team and I have analyzed the enemy positions and developed multiple firing solutions for various scenarios." Colonel Patterson, participating via secure video link from the field hospital, couldn't hide his concern. "Martinez, I'm serious about the psychological pressure. The enemy has been dropping shells on this base every 15 minutes for the past week. Their counter-battery fire is accurate, sustained, and designed specifically to break the concentration of artillery commanders. You'll be trying to calculate firing solutions while the ground is literally shaking beneath your feet. But Jessica had spent months developing mathematical approaches to artillery command that could function effectively even under extreme stress. "Sir, I've developed computational frameworks that account for stress-induced variables. The key is creating redundant calculation methods that remain valid even when external conditions are chaotic." The mission began at 0530 hours on a foggy Thursday morning. Jessica took her position in the heavily reinforced fire direction center, surrounded by the sophisticated computers, radar displays, and communication equipment that connected her to 25 American artillery pieces spread across a 20-mile front. But as the operation commenced, Jessica realized that all her theoretical preparation couldn't fully prepare her for the psychological reality of directing artillery fire while under constant bombardment. "Fire Direction Center, this is Battery Alpha," came the voice of Captain Mike Gunner Johnson, commander of the lead M77 howitzer battery. "We're receiving incoming artillery fire. Enemy shells landing within 200 meters of our position. Request immediate counter-battery fire." Jessica studied her displays with the intense focus of a mathematician solving a complex equation. The enemy had begun their daily bombardment right on schedule, but this time she was ready for them. Her radar system showed incoming artillery rounds from multiple positions, and her computer analysis was already calculating the back trajectory to determine the firing positions. "Battery Alpha, this is Fire Direction Center," Jessica responded calmly, her voice steady despite the explosions echoing through the bunker. "I'm tracking the incoming fire. Enemy position, Charlie 7, grid coordinates 345-567, range 12,400 meters, elevation angle 23 degrees. Recommend immediate displacement after firing." Lieutenant Maria Hammer Chen, operating an M109 Paladin self-propelled howitzer, reported in. "Fire Direction Center, Hammer Battery. We're taking heavy fire from multiple directions. I count at least 6 different enemy batteries targeting our position." This was exactly the kind of moment that Jessica's superiors had worried about: multiple simultaneous threats, incomplete information, and the psychological pressure of knowing that American lives depended on her calculations. But Jessica's mathematical training had prepared her for exactly this scenario. "All batteries, this is Fire Direction Center. I'm implementing pattern Delta 7. Instead of engaging enemy positions sequentially, we're going to use mathematical modeling to predict their firing patterns and strike them during their reload cycles." Over the next 20 minutes, Jessica implemented a strategy that had never been attempted in combat. Using advanced mathematical analysis, she began to map the timing patterns of enemy artillery fire, identifying the precise moments when each enemy battery would be most vulnerable to counterattack. "Battery Bravo, enemy position. Echo 3 will complete their next firing sequence in 45 seconds. I want you to deliver precision fire at grid 278-445, exactly 30 seconds after their next shot. Their crew will be reloading and can't take evasive action." Captain David Precision Williams, commanding a battery of M777 howitzers, executed the firing solution perfectly. The mathematical timing was exact. His shells arrived just as the enemy crew was loading their next round, destroying the artillery piece and eliminating the threat. "Direct hit, Fire Direction Center. Enemy battery Echo 3 is silent." But Jessica's real innovation wasn't in the individual targeting. It was in her systematic approach to dismantling the entire enemy artillery network through mathematical analysis. For the next 4 hours, Jessica conducted what military historians would later describe as a mathematical symphony of destruction. She analyzed the enemy's communication patterns, predicted their repositioning schedules, and calculated the optimal firing sequences to maximize damage while minimizing American exposure to return fire. But Jessica's greatest insight was recognizing that the enemy artillery network operated according to mathematical principles that could be exploited. Their firing patterns, communication protocols, and tactical responses all followed predictable algorithms that could be analyzed and countered. Fire Direction Center, this is Charlie Battery, reported Major Lisa Thunder Rodriguez. We've been taking fire from a position that's not on our target list. Looks like they moved during the night. Instead of panic, Jessica felt the familiar excitement of encountering a new mathematical problem. Charlie Battery, transmit the incoming trajectory data. I'll calculate their new position and develop a firing solution. Using advanced ballistics calculations that accounted for wind patterns, terrain features, and atmospheric conditions, Jessica determined the enemy's new firing position with mathematical precision. But more importantly, she realized that their movement pattern revealed something crucial about their overall strategy. All batteries, this is Fire Direction Center. The enemy is repositioning according to a predictable pattern. They're moving their artillery in a rotation designed to confuse our targeting, but the rotation follows a mathematical sequence. I can predict where each battery will be positioned for the next 6 hours. What happened next would revolutionize how the military approached counter-battery operations. Instead of reacting to enemy fire, Jessica began proactively targeting positions where enemy artillery would be located based on her mathematical predictions. Battery Delta, I want you to pre-position for fire mission at grid coordinates 456-789. The enemy will move Battery Foxtrot to that location in approximately 18 minutes. When they arrive, you'll have a perfect firing solution. The prediction was exactly accurate. When the enemy artillery moved into the predicted position, Battery Delta was ready with precisely calculated fire that destroyed the target before it could fire a single shot. Fire Direction Center, this is Delta Battery. Target destroyed before they could engage. How did you know they would be there? Jessica smiled despite the chaos around her. Mathematics, Delta Battery. Their movement patterns follow predictable algorithms. Over the following hours, Jessica's mathematical approach to artillery warfare proved devastatingly effective. By treating the battlefield as a complex equation with multiple variables, she was able to predict enemy actions, optimize American firing solutions, and systematically eliminate threats with unprecedented precision. Fire Direction Center, this is Bravo Battery. We've eliminated 3 enemy positions using your predictive targeting. This is incredible. We're hitting them before they can even set up their guns. But Jessica's greatest challenge came when the enemy realized what was happening and began trying to break her mathematical models by introducing randomness into their operations. All batteries, this is Fire Direction Center. The enemy is attempting to counter our predictive targeting by randomizing their movements. But randomness is still mathematics. It just requires different computational approaches. Jessica spent the next hour developing new mathematical frameworks that could account for apparently random enemy behavior. She analyzed their previous patterns, identified the constraints that limited their movement options, and created probability models that could predict their likely positions even when they were trying to be unpredictable. Charlie Battery, enemy position Hotel 6 has been trying to avoid our targeting by moving randomly, but their movement is constrained by terrain features and supply requirements. They have 3 possible positions available, and I'm calculating probability distributions for each location. The mathematical analysis proved correct again. By targeting all 3 possible positions in sequence, Charlie Battery successfully eliminated the enemy artillery that had been evading American fire for hours. Fire Direction Center, this is Alpha Battery. I've got to ask, how are you doing this? It's like you can see the future. Jessica's response would become legendary among artillery officers. I'm not seeing the future, Alpha Battery. I'm calculating it. Mathematics doesn't lie, and battlefield behavior follows mathematical principles whether people realize it or not. But Jessica's ultimate test came when the enemy launched their most desperate gambit, a coordinated assault by all remaining artillery pieces designed to overwhelm American defenses through sheer volume of fire. All batteries, this is Fire Direction Center. I'm detecting massive incoming fire from 15 different positions. This is their final push. They're committing everything they have left. The barrage that followed was the most intense artillery bombardment Jessica's team had ever experienced. Shells were landing around the fire direction center every few seconds, communications were being jammed, and several American positions reported direct hits and casualties. But instead of the panic that her superiors had predicted, Jessica entered a state of mathematical clarity that would define her career. The chaos around her seemed to slow down as she processed the incoming data with machine-like precision. All batteries, this is Fire Direction Center. I'm implementing simultaneous counter-battery fire against all enemy positions. Each battery will receive individualized firing solutions calculated to achieve maximum effect while minimizing counter-battery exposure. What happened next was a masterpiece of mathematical warfare. Jessica coordinated 25 American artillery pieces in a synchronized assault that struck all 15 remaining enemy positions within a 3-minute window. The firing solutions were so precise that American shells arrived at their targets before the enemy could complete their reload cycles. "Fire Direction Center, this is all batteries," came the amazed voice of Captain Johnson. "We've got confirmed destruction of all targeted enemy positions. The incoming fire has stopped completely." The silence that followed was profound. For the first time in weeks, forward operating Base Apache was not under artillery bombardment. Jessica had accomplished something that military analysts had considered impossible: the complete elimination of a sophisticated enemy artillery network through mathematical precision rather than brute force. "All batteries, this is Fire Direction Center," Jessica announced, her voice steady despite the enormity of what she had accomplished. "Mission complete. Final tally: 40 enemy artillery pieces destroyed, 15 rocket launchers neutralized, 0 American casualties from counter-battery fire. All units stand down and prepare for damage assessment." The celebration in the Fire Direction Center was immediate and overwhelming. Officers who had questioned Jessica's psychological fitness for artillery command now watched in amazement as she completed the most successful counter-battery operation in recent military history, while maintaining perfect composure under the most intense pressure imaginable. General Thompson, who had observed the entire operation from the Tactical Operations Center, called Jessica directly. "Captain Martinez, correction, Major Martinez, what you accomplished today will be studied by artillery officers for generations. You didn't just eliminate enemy artillery, you revolutionized how we think about mathematical warfare." But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from the artillery crews themselves. Captain Johnson, who had initially worried about Jessica's ability to function under fire, was the first to congratulate her when the mission ended. "Calculator, I've been doing artillery for 12 years, and I've never seen anything like what you did today. You turned mathematics into the most deadly weapon on the battlefield." Lieutenant Chen echoed the sentiment. "Ma'am, you proved that brain power can be more devastating than firepower. You didn't just coordinate our artillery. You turned it into a precision instrument that could predict and destroy anything the enemy could throw at us." Jessica's operation became the foundation for a new generation of artillery doctrine that integrated advanced mathematics with traditional gunnery skills. Her techniques for predictive targeting and mathematical battlefield analysis were incorporated into artillery training programs throughout the military. The methods she developed during Operation Steel Thunder were taught at Fort Sill and adopted by Allied artillery forces around the world. Her approach to treating battlefield dynamics as mathematical problems became known as calculator doctrine and fundamentally changed how artillery officers approached their profession. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the military evaluated officers for high-stress positions. Jessica's success proved that analytical thinking and mathematical precision weren't hindrances under pressure. They were force multipliers that enabled commanders to achieve better outcomes with fewer resources. Today, Lieutenant Colonel Jessica "Calculator" Martinez commands the Army's Advanced Artillery Research Center, where she develops the mathematical frameworks that guide the next generation of precision fire support. Her 8-hour battle against 40 enemy cannons is remembered not just as a tactical victory, but as a demonstration that mathematics can be the most powerful weapon in modern warfare. And when young artillery officers ask her how she maintained such precision under the most intense bombardment imaginable, Jessica always gives them the same advice. Never forget that mathematics is the universal language of the battlefield. Shells follow ballistic equations, timing follows mathematical patterns, and enemy behavior follows statistical models. When you truly understand the mathematics of warfare, chaos becomes predictable, and fear becomes just another variable to be calculated and controlled. Because sometimes the person everyone thinks will crack under pressure is exactly the one who will turn pressure into precision, and sometimes the deadliest weapon on the battlefield isn't the biggest gun, it's the most brilliant mind.